My neighbors laughed when my own kids kicked me out of my house. They stopped laughing when they saw who came to help me move. Their jaws dropped. If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're watching from, because I want to know how far a story like this travels, how far a father's heart can echo. It was a hot afternoon when it happened. The pavement on our street was soft under the sun, and the hedges hummed with bees. I was standing on my own porch, the porch I painted with my late wife on a spring morning long ago, the porch where my son ate birthday cake with frosting on his cheeks. The old wind chime made a small music in the doorway. My son stood there in front of me, straight-backed, jaw set. His wife rested a hand on his arm as if to steady him, as if the words he was about to say would require balance. "Dad," he said, voice loud enough for the street to hear, "this house isn't yours anymore. Pack your things. We want you out by tonight." At first I thought it was a bad joke, the kind we would laugh about later, but his eyes were clear and cold. Someone across the street snorted. Someone else whispered. And then a small wave of laughter moved through the neighborhood like wind through dry leaves. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. The first thing I did was breathe. A slow breath in, a slow breath out. Then I nodded. Because sometimes nodding is the only way to keep from drowning in your own blood. The sun was sharp on the driveway. I could see my reflection in the glass of the front door, older than I remembered, hair more salt than pepper, shoulders not as straight as they once were. My son's wife adjusted her sunglasses, smiling at something only she could see. The lane beside the rose bushes filled with faces. Mr. Connolly, who always watered his lawn at exactly 6. The Silvers still wearing their tennis whites from the club. 2 teenagers I didn't know, recording on their phones. I heard one of them say, "Imagine being kicked out by your own kids." It was not a pleasant sound. My son crossed his arms. "We've already changed the locks, Dad," he added. "So don't try anything." I looked at the door I had sanded myself, the brass handle my wife chose because it was warm metal, not cold. In my pocket, my hand closed around a small key. I felt its shape press into my palm. I did not sigh. I did not shake. I just thought of the day we installed that lock together, me and the woman I loved, and how I made her laugh when the screwdriver slipped, and I almost swore but caught myself because our boy was sleeping. I went upstairs to get a suitcase. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and something new and expensive I couldn't name. In the hallway, the wall where I used to line up my son's height marks had been painted over in a color they call greige, a polite color that keeps secrets. While I pulled the old suitcase from the closet, a memory opened like a door in my mind. My wife was in the kitchen wearing her blue shawl with little embroidered flowers. I could hear the kettle click off. Our son, 3 years old, ran in circles with a wooden airplane. "Gentle hands," she always said, and he would stop to show her the plane's wings. That woman believed in good, solid things. The feel of wood under your hand, the smell of bread in the oven, the way a home can be a heart if you tend it. We built this house together, not just wood and drywall, but days and years. We dug the small garden in the back ourselves. We planted a maple tree, just a sapling then. We hung the swing she picked from the flea market. We argued, we made up, we danced in the living room when there was nothing to celebrate except being alive. She is gone now, but the home still held the echo of her voice, the kind of echo that tells you you're not finished yet. I came downstairs with the suitcase and a box. My son glanced at his watch like a manager timing a task. "Don't take too long, Dad," he said, his tone casual, too casual. The way people talk when they've convinced themselves that cruelty is just another form of efficiency. "We've got plans tonight." His wife let out a small laugh. From across the street, laughter answered. I set the box down on the porch rail and looked at my son. He had my eyes, but they were clouded with hurry and hunger. "You always told me to be bold," he said, as if that made any of this noble. I nodded again. "I did," I said. "Boldness builds bridges. It doesn't burn them." He rolled his eyes. "Don't start with your speeches." I didn't. I kept my voice level, almost gentle. "Not a speech," I said. "A reminder." He hated that. I could see his jaw tighten. He wanted me to yell, to thrash, to do something ugly so he could feel clean. But I have been many things in this life, and ugly is not one of them. Not today. He told me he and his wife were streamlining the family assets, rearranging titles, optimizing for taxes, the kind of talk that takes a home and strips it of everything human. He said the house was part of their future plan, and that I should understand and support the decision because, after all, we're family. At that last word, I almost laughed. Instead, I lifted a book from the box, one of the old ones his mother loved, and brushed dust from its cover. Your mother, I said, believed the point of a plan was to take care of people first. He shrugged. Mom was sentimental. The word stung more than I expected. She was strong, I said. He smirked. Strong and broke. The neighbors heard that. Some of them laughed again, a thin, embarrassed laugh. I watched their eyes flick around, looking for an exit from their own discomfort. There is a quick kind of laughter that hides fear. I know it too well. My son kept going, words sharper now. You're not being reasonable, Dad. You can't live alone here. We need the space. We can sell, reinvest, whatever. This is better for everyone. He had prepared these phrases. He had practiced them. You can tell when someone speaks from the inside of a thought, or just from its packaging. My son had bought this speech ready-made, so I said very little. I put my hand on the porch post and felt the grooves in the wood I carved one winter when a storm kept us indoors. My wife had drawn tiny leaves in pencil, and I followed them with the chisel until her leaves became permanent. Do you remember? I asked my son. The summer we painted this porch and you kept stepping in the paint tray and your mother kept laughing? He looked away. No, maybe he did. Maybe he decided it didn't matter. That's another thing about people who hurt you. They often need to destroy the evidence of the good too, to make the hurt feel cleaner. We're done here, his wife said, bright voice, fast words, eyes hard. You have until 8. She pulled out her phone and sent a message. The movers are ready, she smiled. We're helping you pack, I nodded slowly. Thank you, I said. My son frowned, suspicious. Don't get dramatic, he said. Dramatic? I looked at the sky, so hot and clean it almost hurt to stare at. No, I said softly. Not today. Then I did something very simple. I bent, picked up the box, set it down again, and took out my phone. When you are old, people think your hands are clumsy. They forget your hands were once the hands of a young man who built things, fixed things, held a newborn, carried heavy weight. My fingers were steady. I scrolled to a number I had not called in years, a number I keep in my phone under a small, simple name. Not lawyer, not bank, not backup, just a name I know better than my own sometimes. I tapped it and raised the phone to my ear. My son laughed. Who are you calling, Dad? Your old drinking buddies? They can't help you now. His wife tilted her head, amused. I kept my voice low. Not them, I said. Someone better. He rolled his eyes again. I told the person on the other end 3 sentences. The person answered 5 words. I said thank you and ended the call. That's it? My son asked, too loud. That's your big plan? I shrugged and picked up the box again. I never make big plans, I said. I make sure the right people know the truth. He snorted. Truth, he repeated, as if the word were a toy he had outgrown. You're stalling. He looked at the crowd. This is embarrassing. The first car arrived before the sentence cooled in the air. It turned the corner slowly, humming, the kind of hum you can feel in your ribs. It was black and long and quiet, the quiet of a thing that does not need to announce itself. Then another car behind it, then 2 more. The laughter on the sidewalk stopped as if a hand had closed around it. The Silvas lowered their sunglasses. Mr. Connolly's hose fell from his hand and sprayed the pavement. The teenagers kept recording, but their phones wobbled. My son's wife blinked. My son straightened his back, then straightened it again as if the first straightening hadn't been enough. The cars stopped in a line along the curb. The doors opened. Handsome men and women in dark suits stepped out. Not flashy, not loud, the kind of people who carry their power like a coat they forget they're wearing. My son tried to smile. He failed. Who are they? He whispered. Movers, I said. Lawyers, friends, he laughed, but the sound came out thin. Friends? I nodded. Your mother always said to choose friends you can trust if the worst day ever comes. I turned to the woman in front, a calm woman with a folder. Thank you for coming, I told her. She nodded once, opened the folder, and took out a stack of papers so heavy it bent her wrist. I did not make a speech. I do not believe in long speeches thrown into small afternoons. I stepped down from the porch, one slow step after the other, and my shoes creaked on the wood my wife and I had nailed down together in our younger days. I stood on the walkway. The woman opened the folder. "We'll handle this," she said. Her voice was like a level set on a shelf, straight, certain. She handed me a document. I held it out for my son to see. He tried to glare it out of existence. "What's that?" he asked. "History," I said, "and the present." The woman spoke so the neighbors could hear. "This is the original title and deed to the property. The current owner is the man standing here. We have the recorded chain of ownership, and we have the amended directive signed by his wife before she passed." My son shook his head. "No," he said. "We changed all that." The woman looked at him as if he'd told a joke she didn't quite understand. "No, you didn't," she said. "You initiated changes that were never completed, never approved, and never legal." Another person stepped forward, the notary I've known for years. A quiet man who talks to his seal like it's a pet. He nodded. "I'm familiar with the file." He lifted his little stamp like a blessing. The neighbors leaned in. The paper made a soft sound between my fingers, the sound of a promise kept long past its due date. My son tried a different angle. "We live here now," he said. "We've been paying for things." The woman smiled without showing teeth. "Residency does not transfer ownership," she said. "And expenses paid under false assumptions do not create rights." She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Another person stepped forward. He had a battered leather portfolio and the calm look of a man who has counted money in storm and sunshine. "We also have documentation," he said, "that this property is not only owned by your father, but has been placed in a trust established by your mother with clear, explicit terms. Those terms included a life estate for your father and full control to him with the right to appoint or remove successor beneficiaries." He opened the portfolio and slid a copy toward my son. "You were never the owner. You were a guest." A murmur went through the crowd like wind passing through the maples. My son's wife said, "This is ridiculous," but her voice broke on the last syllable. I looked at my son. I remembered the day we brought him home from the hospital. I remembered the way his fingers curled around mine, the way his mouth opened and closed like a goldfish when he was hungry, the way he slept with one hand above his head like a tiny king. I remembered his first steps, his first day of school, his first heartbreak. I remembered the night I stood in the doorway and watched my wife whisper to him about being kind. "Everything you have should make you softer, not harder," she had said. In front of the house we built, I felt my wife's hand on my shoulder, not a ghost, but a steadiness you get when someone loved you well and you loved them back. I turned to the woman with the folder. "Begin," I said. My voice was flat, calm, not anger but something colder. She nodded and gave a small signal with her hand. The movers took out boxes. They did not head toward my things. They headed toward the door my son had tried to call his. He jumped forward. "Hey!" he shouted. "You can't touch our stuff." The woman lifted a page. "Per the trust directive and the notice we are now issuing, you are no longer permitted to occupy this property. You are being given 1 hour to gather your immediate personal items. The remainder will be inventoried and delivered to the address you provide within 7 days." My son stared at me as if he had never seen me before. Maybe he hadn't. I kept my eyes on him. "You told me to pack my things," I said. "No." I let the word hang there, simple as a nail hammered into wood. "Today, you will pack yours." The neighbors didn't laugh. They were too busy holding their breath. My son looked around, as if the street might agree with him, and erase the moment with a friendly vote. But the street had turned into a theater, and the audience had gone quiet. Mr. Connolly scratched his head. The Silvers whispered to each other. The teenagers kept recording, but they were recording history now, not a prank. My son tried to sound strong. "This is our home," he said again, but it sounded like a question. The woman pointed to a signature, my wife's fine handwriting, careful and honest. "Your mother was clear," she said. "She wanted her husband safe in the home they built, and she trusted him to decide who would live here after." She put a second document on top of the first. "Today he is deciding," my boy swallowed. He had my eyes, but right then they could not meet mine. He looked at his wife. She was paler now, lips pressed thin, sunglasses no help at all. There is a moment in every storm when the rain decides how it will fall. Gentle, violent, steady, stinging. I had to decide what kind of rain I would be. I thought of my wife again. She used to say that mercy is not weakness. She used to hide extra fruit in the bags of people who couldn't afford much at the market. We aren't rich, she would say, but we can be generous. So I made a choice right there on the walkway in front of the house where we danced for no reason. I turned to the woman with the folder. They can collect what they need today, I said. Clothes, photos, the important small things. The rest you inventory. Make sure nothing is lost. Send it to the address they give. The woman nodded. My son stared at me, hope flaring, pride fighting it. So we can stay? He asked. No, I said. Not today. He took a step toward me. The movers took a step too. He stopped. I lifted my hand. You told me I was in the way, I said. That this house wasn't mine. You said I should understand and support. I do understand. I understand you forgot where you came from. I understand you thought love was a faucet you could turn on when you wanted, and off when it made you uncomfortable. I understand you turned our home into a plan. I didn't raise my voice. But I do not support it. The words were small stones dropping in a deep well. You could feel the echoes, even if you couldn't see the bottom. He packed. They packed. The movers helped, polite and fast. There were no jokes now, no laughter. The woman with the folder explained each step in a calm monotone as if reading the weather. This will happen, and then that, and then the locks will be changed. My son carried a box down the stairs, stumbled a little and set it down too hard. A frame inside cracked. He looked down, and for a second I saw my little boy, the one who would cry when a toy broke, the one who wanted me to fix what he had dropped. He looked up at me. For a second I almost stepped forward. But a father does not rush to glue the broken pieces of a choice his grown child made, while looking him in the eye and saying, "Get out." A father can forgive. He can love. He can hold a door in a storm, but if he pretends a knife is a feather, he teaches his child the wrong kind of softness. So I stood still. He looked away and kept moving. We changed the locks at 7:53. At 7:59, the movers closed the truck and the lawyers finished their notes. At 8 o'clock, the street was quiet again. The neighbors slipped into their houses, some ashamed, some stunned, some ready to retell the story with themselves as wise observers. The teenagers drifted away, tapping on their screens. When everyone was gone, I sat on the porch steps. The wood was warm from the day. The wind chime sang a little. The sky had softened into the blue-violet that means evening is almost here. I rubbed my thumb over the grooves in the porch post, those little leaves my wife had sketched for me once. For a moment I closed my eyes and pictured her on the porch, shawl around her shoulders. Hair pinned up with 2 sticks she would lose and I would find. Head tilted at me with that look that means, be good, but be strong. I did what you asked, I whispered. I kept the house a heart. I felt something like relief. Something like grief. They are siblings in the same family, you know. Relief sits beside grief and holds its hand. I stood and went inside. The rooms felt familiar again, not because the furniture was mine, but because the air had relaxed. I walked to the safe behind the bookshelf, the one my wife teased me about for being overly serious. I pressed my hand to the panel, typed the code, and opened it. Inside were documents, yes, but also something else, an old envelope with my wife's handwriting. She had written one word on it. After. I had never opened it. I opened it now. Her letter was simple, just like she was when she wanted to say the most important things. She wrote about the maple tree, about the swing, about how she loved the way the house smelled after rain. She wrote about our boy, about how his heart was big, and sometimes big hearts get confused and turn into mouths that eat everything they see because they are afraid of being empty. If he forgets, she wrote, remind him. If he refuses to remember, protect yourself. She ended with a line so clean I could have carved it into the porch post. Families don't take what's yours and tell you you're not welcome. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. I slid it into my shirt pocket so it rested over my heart. I stood there in the lamplight and let myself feel the full weight of the day. The house hummed. The night air moved through the window screens. I could hear the tiny scrape of a moth against the glass, gentle and persistent. Life kept going, as it always does. The next morning, I woke early and walked into the yard. The maple tree had grown taller than the roof now. Its leaves moved like hands waving a shy hello. The swing hung still. I set it swaying with one push. The garden had weeds in the corners, small ones that could be pulled with 2 fingers. I knelt and tugged them out. It was simple work, honest work. My knees complained and then made peace with the ground. I thought of my son. I wondered if he was sleeping or lying awake. I wondered if he would come back, not as a conqueror, but as a child, ready to learn again how to be a man. I wondered if I would let him in. Mercy is not weakness, my wife said. Mercy is a door, but a door needs a threshold, and thresholds are meant to be stepped over with respect. I decided I would not lock the door he can't see. I decided I would wait, not with open arms, but with open eyes. A father can do that. A father can hold 2 truths in the same hand. I love you, and you cannot live here while you treat love like a faucet you control. By noon, the neighborhood knew everything, or thought it did. People slowed as they passed. Some nodded, small, embarrassed nods. Some offered words like, "Sorry about yesterday," as if they hadn't laughed. I didn't punish them. They had seen something strange and ugly, and then something stranger and sharper. It is hard to know how to act when a story refuses to be simple. I thanked them. I asked Mr. Connolly if he would lend me his ladder next week. He said yes and looked relieved that ladders still mattered. The Silvers brought a pie, store-bought and oversweet, and I ate a slice with them on the porch while we talked about weather. The teenagers came by later. One of them had posted the video. It had already traveled far. "It's crazy," he said. "Everyone's talking about it." I nodded. "Tell them," I said, "tell the people watching that there's a difference between power that shouts and power that simply stands. Tell them not to laugh so fast at other people's pain. Tell them to build their homes like hearts and to write their names on doors with kindness." The boy blinked. "I'll try," he said. "He will forget most of it. He will remember one line when he needs it. That is how talk works." In the late afternoon, I walked through the rooms and touched the things that mattered. The window latch my wife always struggled with. The corner of the rug that never lay flat. The dent in the kitchen table where our son dropped a can of soup when he was 8 and insisted he could carry everything at once. I made tea. I sat in her chair, the one with the cushion worn just so. I let the quiet carry me the way a river carries a leaf. I thought of the trust, of the papers, of the way money can both save and destroy. I thought of how we had almost lost more than a house. Love needs walls sometimes, not to keep people out, but to keep promises in. Before the light faded, I wrote a letter to my son. Not a long letter, not a lecture, just a handful of sentences, each one weighed like a nail before you drive it home. I told him that if he wanted to speak like a man, he should come without an audience or a script. I told him that if he wanted to be welcomed, he should bring an apology that is not a transaction. I told him that his mother loved him and would have wanted him to find his soft heart again. I folded the letter and put it by the door. I did not send it. He knows where I live. When night came, I walked out to the porch and sat on the steps again. The stars were clean. The air smelled like cut grass and the faint memory of heat baked into the pavement. A stray cat hopped onto the rail and stared at me as if to say, "You again." I scratched its ear. I felt tired, but it was a good tired. The kind you feel after you've lifted something heavy and set it down in the right place. I thought of the title of the story people would tell. My neighbors laughed when my own kids kicked me out of my house. They stopped laughing when they saw who came to help me move. It sounds like a boast, but it isn't. It is a warning and a prayer. Don't build your life on other people's humiliation. Don't mistake quiet for weakness. Don't sell your mother's memory for quick money. And if you ever find yourself on a porch with a box in your hand and a street laughing at you, breathe. Breathe until the world slows, until your mind is a steady room, until you can hear the small voice that says, "Not today." I won't lie and say I felt joy when the locks turned and my son stood on the sidewalk with his boxes. I felt sorrow. I felt it in my bones. But sorrow is not the same as regret. Regret is for wrong choices. Sorrow is for heavy right ones. That night, I put my wife's letter back in the safe, and beside it, I set a small envelope with a copy of the house key. One day, if my son learns how to hold things gently, I might hand that envelope to him. Not as a prize, not as a bribe, as a sign that he has remembered how to be a son. In the morning, I will oil the door hinges. I will sweep the porch. I will water the flowers my wife planted. I will stand at the edge of the garden and watch the maples shift in the light. And if you ask me what I learned, I will tell you this. Families don't take what's yours and tell you you're not welcome. Families protect what we build together, even when time and grief try to pull it apart. Families speak with soft voices that still carry weight. Families make plans that look like dinner tables and bedtime stories, not spreadsheets and eviction notices. If you've stayed with me this long, tell me where you're watching from, because I want to know how far this porch light shines. Maybe you're in a small apartment with a thin door and a loud hallway. Maybe you're in a big house with an empty room that used to be full of noise. Maybe you're sitting in a car outside a place you don't want to go back into. Wherever you are, I hope you build something steady. I hope you hold your people with open hands and strong arms. I hope you remember that anger is easy and control is noisy, but real strength is the quiet that says no, when no is the only honest word left. And if the day ever comes when everyone expects you to swallow humiliation like medicine, remember this afternoon on my street. Remember the cause. Remember the papers. Remember the way laughter can dry up when it finally meets the truth. Thanks for being here with me. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of something you needed to remember, please like, share, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe so more people can hear it and hold it close.